Today's chair. I'm Errol Bennett. I am a core member of the Turing community. I am on the Book Dash Planning Committee and Working Group. I am also a member of Tools, Practices and Systems at the Alan Turing Institute. My first Book Dash was actually the February 2021, where I met a lot of amazing people, and other areas of the book I work on are research infrastructure roles and activism as a form of ethical research, or portion of ethical research. So first up, I also do want to give a huge shout out to our newest team member who has joined us. You may have seen the announcements in Slack or spotted her around GitHub. Lele Demerzi has joined the Turing Way as the research project manager for the project. Give us a wave, Lele.
Hi.
She's an architect by training. She's got a lot of awards in arts and experience in cultural management, and she previously was the program administrator for Living with Machines at the Turings. We are delighted to have her on board, and I know she's looking forward to working with you. Lele, do you want to say anything very briefly?
Just very briefly, I'm really excited to be working with this community, and I'm still finding my way around. This is my first ever community call, my first ever upcoming book dash as well. So it's a lot of wayfinding, but it's really indeed very exciting.
Great. I know you'll all make Lele feel incredibly welcome and show her the ropes on the project. We are slightly behind time, but that should be fine. Opening the welcome.
Oh, it's me, it's my fault, it's my fault. Sorry.
Kirsty accidentally
press play. Sorry.
Yeah, I've just done the opening and the welcome. We are now going to start, as we do most community forums, with a breakout discussion. Then there's going to be a discussion on multi-stakeholder governance in the Turing Way. We'll have a bit of a break after that. And then finally, the working group updates from each working group. And any questions and answers and closing. Right. So over to the breakout activity. The theme is Book Dash Memory Lane. This is the 5th anniversary of the Turing Way project this year. We've been celebrating it in lots of different ways. And I believe this is the 12th Book Dash.
Wow. Don't look at me.
Total. Maybe even more than that. So for the breakout discussion, we are going down memory lane. So Malvika's about to put you into your breakouts based on whether you would like a spoken or a written one. And then each person will have a couple of minutes to share their experiences or thoughts based on one of the following prompts. So if you've attended a book dash before, share your favorite memory from the event, what you created, a session that stood out, the connections you made. If you're attending in November for the first time, what are you most looking forward to? The creative process, joy of storytelling. We want to hear what you're really jazzed about for November. And if you haven't attended, but you might want to in the future, what kind of project or collaboration would you have loved to be a part of? Maybe you have an idea for a chapter or a story, or a particular group of people that you'd really love to be able to justify a whole week of working with online or in a hybrid fashion. So I'm going to hand over to Malvika to set the breakout rooms up.
Okay, opening the room, and you'll be back in 10 minutes.
Great. Have we got everyone back? Wonderful. Thanks very much, everyone. Hopefully, I think to keep us on time, if you want to share any fun reflections in the chat or in the shared notes document about your favorite memories or exciting plans that you have, please do. But I am going to move us on now actually to, Actually, that doesn't make sense for me to share my screen and then hand over immediately to Kirsty. So I'm just going to verbally say we're moving on now to an update from Kirsty on governance, and specifically entitled Multi-Stakeholder Governance in the Turing Way, with inputs from Esther, Carlos, and Lena as well.
Yeah. And So hi everyone, and thank you, Esther, Lena, and Carlos, who is with his son on Fridays, but he made us a little recording. So we talk a lot about governance in these community forum sessions. We've been brainstorming around governance for the last sort of 12 months, a bit more than that. And one of the things that the Turing Way was always supposed to be, and I think is, but I think 2025 is going to be our sort of test to really, really push it, is not a project that is where decisions are made by paid staff members who work at the Turing Institute. So that's a sort of challenge that has been brought to the community, and we've been kind of grappling with it because there is a tension and there is a difficult balance to strike between asking volunteers to be held accountable for tasks versus only having paid members of staff make decisions. And so thinking about kind of how power is distributed, as well as sort of accountability, taking that forwards, is a key challenge that we have been thinking about deeply and hopefully sort of grappling with all of you in the community. So one of the reasons we wanted to have a discussion about multi-stakeholder governance, and we've invited Lena and we've invited Esther and then Carlos as well, is because they have had organisational backing for their work in the Turing Way. So they don't work at the Turing Institute and they have had sort of buy-in from their organisations. We can discuss to the extent of that buy-in and the flavour of that buy-in. That's what we're going to be spending a bit of time on now. But also, I have a piece of news to share with all of you, which is that I'm going to leave the Turing Institute at the end of October. So my last day working at the Turing Institute is going to be on the Friday, the 1st of November. So in 2 weeks' time, I am in the end game with my Turing Institute hat on. And I am delighted to have been to have applied to the Book Dash as a community member. I felt I gave a pretty okay answer around what I thought I could bring to the Book Dash. I said that I knew quite a bit about the Turing Way. And I also said that what I wanted to do is work on the governance for the Turing Way. So I will be joining the Book Dash as an individual contributor, and I will be spending that week. It's going to be a bit hilarious. I'm going to finish work on the Friday and then on Monday morning be all like, hello, everybody. But I will be joining sort of from my annual leave, from my sort of time off. And I don't know what I'm going to be moving on to next, but I have two great visions. I have one vision is that I stay involved in the Turing Way. I feel very strongly, I feel very proud of the Turing Way and I want to stay involved in it. And two, that wherever I go next is able to demonstrate that we can have sort of organizations pay staff in different ways. So one of the things that I think I'd be really keen for us to discuss is kind of how different organizations participate in the Turing Way. And I have obviously quite a lot of vision around kind of what I could do in future roles to be able to sort of fund work in the Turing Way. So there's two levels there. There's being allowed to use as part of your job, contributing in, sharing some of the sort of solidarity of working together in an open source community, versus probably going a sort of step further than that and actually being able to put some institutional funds into the project. Thank you, Liz, in the chat, reviewed the application, hopefully, well, sufficiently positively. Thank you very much. So that's our topic. That's my news. I think what we'll do is jump in. I think what I'll do is I'll play Carlos's video first. Then Esther, if you'd maybe sort of give a little bit of a sort of background of how your organisation has been participating. Then we'll go to Lena, and then discussion, questions, and we can go in any direction. So Yeah, and I can answer any questions as well, thinking about the future of the Turing Way. But hopefully I've answered that my vision for the Turing Way is it stays, it remains. I hope it will continue to have very strong backing from the Turing Institute. Malvika will take over it. She's co-PI at the moment. She'll be PI at the Turing Institute. And very keen to sort of see that funding and support expand from other organizations as well. So let me share my screen, media player, share sound, and let's just say hello to Carlos.
Hi, my name is Carlos Martinez. I'm a community manager at the Netherlands eScience Center. We are the Dutch National Center of Expertise for Research Software, which means that we develop software for many projects together with universities and other academic centers. And we try to do this with the best possible research software guidelines. In this sense, we started developing our own guide for good practice in research software a few years ago. And over the course of the years, we came across the Turing Way, which shared a lot of the same purpose and aims of making research more reproducible. So we decided to team up with the Turing Way and to basically contribute some of our expertise to the Turing Way. Over the course of the years, the way we have done this is that we moved most of our content that used to be in our guide to be in the Turing Way whenever it's something that's very specific, and we keep only the things that are very eScience Center specific in our guide. So for example, we contributed to the chapter about software licenses, where we can talk about why is it important to have a software license and different types of software licenses that are out there. And then we keep eScience Center specific comment, like our choice for using Apache 2 license. We keep that specific to in our guide because that's the guideline that we want to provide to our engineers. So we've continued to do this over the course of the years, trying to contribute to the Turing Way being the go-to place for reproducible research software, and in different topics like software citation, software licensing, in general, good practices of research software. So please feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carlos. Esther, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my name is Esther Plomp. I work at the Delft University of Technology, which is also in the Netherlands, like Carlos. And my faculty, the Faculty of Applied Sciences, has endorsed for me to work on the Turing Way for about 1 or 2 hours a week. And I'm also doing the book dashes in my working hours. So in that sense, they're paying for me to work on the Turing Way. So they're not, also like the eScience Center, they're not directly contributing financially speaking to the project, but for my work hours, they are paying, of course. And that has been made possible because I'm working on topics that are very much related to my work as a data steward. So I am doing all things research data management. And our website at TU Delft was very frustrating in the sense that it was very difficult to update. And once you argue that it's easier to update the Turing Way with this information and to have it peer reviewed by other experts and so forth and so forth, so it's easier to reuse the materials and well, further share the good practices and so forth. My line management got on board, and so it was actually not difficult to have this being part of my job, I must say. I do have a very supportive manager, so that will help. But eventually it just came down to me raising it as a possibility. And then it was pretty quickly okayed. And so since then I am involved in contributing content, not as much as I'd like to, because 1 to 2 hours is still not enough for that. If you join 1 or 2 calls, that's most of the time. But also, yeah, trying to support the book dash organizing. I'm also a member of the planning committee. And it's been very nice, also in terms of skills career development from my side, because sometimes my faculty cannot offer developmental opportunities, so to say, whereas the Turing Way community can in terms of event organizations or working group collaborations and so forth. So I think it's quite yeah, mutually beneficial collaboration, so to say. So I think that's probably why they were very quick with okaying.
Thank you so much, Esther. Leonard, do you want to go next? Just briefly say how you've been connected. Yeah.
Sure, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Lena Karlovskaya. I'm community manager for research data management and open science at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, also based in the Netherlands. And yeah, I work for the library of the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. And in my role, I have a lot of freedom. I am the person organizing events. I have access to various budgets to organize events. So we had a couple of times during the book dashes we actually gathered at Vrije Universiteit, and then there was no difficulty for me to have some budget for lunch for us, for example. So in this sense, I have the endorsement of the organization, and my coordinator was very excited about the Turing Way, and and he's always excited about all kinds of collaborations and us being involved in various initiatives, which has good sides and bad sides, because the endorsement that is too easy to get does not, for example, will not have effect on other colleagues, because they know that you can get this endorsement easily for anything, right? So it's not that it's not that with this endorsement I can really get the time of my colleagues to work on the book dash, for example. But we did have really nice book dashes where like one other colleague of mine was involved, and we created the scribe area images which we could also use for our resources, for example, archiving versus active data storage, and publishing versus archiving. That these were really like nice images that we still use a lot. Also on our website, we have a scribe area image, not created by us, but still we really like to use it. So yeah, there is a lot of like value of the Turing Way that our organization sees. Yeah, I think
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, I think we could have like a whole other discussion about like why are Dutch organizations investing in sort of open source. I think it probably relates to there is a national investment in open source and open science and understanding the value, and so that's sort of it unlocks and therefore cascades down and sort of makes it a bit easier, but it does require, Esther, Lena, and Carlos all have they can see that solidarity, they can see the sort of the value of not creating and one more thing that is duplicating the effort. I really wanted to highlight before I open up for questions, I think this asset around peer review is one of these things that kind of other organizations, like for-profit organizations, would charge a gigantic amount for. And we actually do have extremely expert peer review as part of sort of curating the materials in the Turing Way, which is a super interesting element as a kind of, it's free at point of access. But if you're going to allow staff time to contribute to the Turing Way, then it's not free, but there's there's sort of a good asset that comes along with that. So open to questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Maybe I can
Yeah.
ask a question. What does this mean for the Turing Way sustainability? So people like Esther, Carlos, Lena, and a lot of people who are very self-driven in
Yeah.
moving forward this kind of contribution. It did not come from their organization, right? So it seems like there is still that kind of, how can we have these individuals that feel confident to go back to their organization and say that, this is useful for us. Yeah, I'm just like thinking about, is there a pathway for people to learn from their experiences or other people's experiences, and does that need to be structured?
Yeah. What do people think? Does in general, do you think the sort of, yeah, what structure would be helpful? Maybe I'll go with Esther and Lena, and if anyone wants to put a comment in the chat or raise your hand, you're very welcome to speak. But
Maybe we can, like Esther, we maybe can share how we presented the Book Dash at the Data Steward meetup group. Do you think that would be helpful?
I'm not sure, because that's less about that's more about getting new members in, and they can eventually be contributing to sustainability, but
Yeah.
also could not. So that's more of this question. I'm not sure how to add this, as in I think it requires some personal touches. So for example, I will leave my position as well, but I'll try to get the new person that will start on the 1st of November on board, and try to get her to go to the book dash as well, to see if she might be able to take over from me in that sense. And I'm not saying I'm leaving the Turing Way, because that will be like more of a stability thing in my life actually in the next coming months. But then hopefully we can get another person on board. But again, because it's such a personal motivation or a personal thing, if this person decides like, oh, this is not for me, then yeah, it will very likely disappear. Also because all of the other data stewards at TU Delft are also not as engaged. As in, one of them attended the book dash, but other than that, it was, well, two of them will attend the book dash because one signed up for the next one. But other than that, they're less engaged or not engaged at all, and I find that very difficult to get them on board. Because yeah, you can have one-to-one conversations and ask why not, but then it's always going to be like, yeah, I have limited time and so forth, or I prioritize this. So it's a very, in my experience, personal thing, and I'm not sure how you can get that more into the institute unless you formalize engagements more. And I'm not sure how that would look like. So I'll leave this to Sarah to address or to
yeah,
raise any
let's
points.
go. We've got a couple of questions. I think, Erin, you're going to let us go maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to let
over.
this go a little bit longer.
Yeah,
and we'll
you.
just have this is part of the Q&A, so we'll have a slightly shorter Q&A.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Sarah, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so like, I think this question of like, what does it mean for the Turing Way sits in like a broader like context of, organizations just supporting open source generally, given that 95% of the internet runs on open source, right? So I think what the folk who just spoke could do that would be helpful as like a data point for replication is like share how you convinced your institutes to allow you to do this. Obviously, as just said, there's national buy-in, so I'm not expecting there was a lot of convincing, but I'm also, I guess like I assume those conversations were a little bit longer than just can I? Yes. So like, what are the methodologies to go about convincing organizations to get on board with supporting open source contribution during work time? And then like maybe in a year's time, getting your managers to reflect on how they've benefited from you contributing to the Turing Way, like what they got out of it, which then feeds back into the how do you convince kind of thing. I just watched a talk a couple of days ago that was like the business case for open source, and the only criticism I had of the talk was that it's like very commit based, and it's like, what about people whose job isn't code? And I think we've got a good opportunity here to explore that a bit more.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Those are great points. Jim, let's bring you in.
Yeah, I think I've got more sort of thoughts than questions or answers, but I guess I think we've already spoken a bit about this, Kirsty. There are different ways that the project could be organized, and you could have a system which is entirely volunteer based, and there's sort of no like permanence, people whose job it is just to work on the Turing Way. And I think there's been a nice thing in the past where people are sort of very motivated to add some writing to sort of get a chapter and to get their idea in the book. So you don't really need people to be paid to do that because they've got lots of enthusiasm for it. But it's nice that I think we've been able to have sort of paid positions for the really important sort of maintenance, stewardship sort of work, which might be the area where it's more difficult to get someone to say, well, I'm going to spend my free time looking at issues and answering questions or checking that it still builds correctly and things like that. So I guess there's a question like, what sort of model do we want to aim for? Or maybe we're just going to sort of find out what works and adjust when we need to. But I would guess there's probably a pretty good case to make that someone should fund this because there's a lot of value and people are using the Turing Way and talking about it, and it's not uncommon now that I'll see someone in a talk say or reference the Turing Way and say, this is a resource we used and it's really good and promote it that way. So there's a good case to make that there's value, and someone should sort of put some money up and say, we're going to support this because it's important to keep it going.
I think we're at time, so I'm going to add like 3 sort of little extra points to kind of scatter in, and then it would be wonderful to continue to have these conversations over Slack. We can keep them going in various different spaces. So one is, I think we should not underestimate how much organizations like seeing their logo on stuff that already exists. And I think it's amazing how little they actually need to get back to be able to say, look how great we are, look, we are also connected to this project. So there's a bit of creativity in, if what is it that organizations want? Many times they want to have their logo somewhere. Sometimes they want to be able to tell people about their work, for example. And actually that's worth quite a lot. I think there's another element which I think both Lena and Esther touched on actually, which is kind of professional development and upskilling as allowing staff members to be able to raise their own profiles. We sometimes think about that as an individual thing, but actually organizations being able to point to saying, look at how we support our staff, look at how we're increasing our reach, look at like the network that we are a part of is very, very strong, is very valuable. And then the other thing that personally I think is going to be the biggest it's going to be my biggest challenge in wherever I go next is the name. The Turing Way, a lot of people think it is work for the Turing Institute, and it's not. The Turing Way is its own project. It's got a really healthy group of people from around the world who contribute, and so how we how we help organizations to kind of dismantle that bias of, but it's not, we're helping another organization, is actually an extremely important conversation to have. And I think it's a very challenging one. It's one that I have a lot of appetite to do. And while I worked at the Turing Institute, I couldn't really have it because everyone was like, of course you'd say that, you work at the Turing Institute. So it will be one of my great challenges of 2025 to get other organizations to say, we are proud to pay staff some amount of time to work on the Turing way. This is what we get out of it. This is why we're proud to be contributing to open source.
I actually do have a comment.
Yeah.
So of course we know that there are like things like Budapest Declaration of Open Access. Nobody says it belongs to Budapest, right? Or the Paris Declaration or whatever other declaration. So we have to kind of tell the name is based on the origin,
Yeah.
and make sure that in going forward when we do communicate about the Turing, we communicate the origin. Like we go and give this talk and we have in our standard slide that the Turing Way belongs to the community, the Turing Institute supports it. I think we need to probably revise that slide to say it started at the Turing Institute.
Yeah. It is a project that would have struggled to have got off the ground and got to the scale that it has without 5 years of investment and leadership from the Turing Institute. And now the big exciting moment is going to be, we keep the leadership at the Turing Institute, we keep the investment from the Turing Institute, and we add leadership and we add investment from other places, which we already have been doing, but I think the next 5 years are going to be characterized by formalizing that, not in a way that puts up barriers, but actually in a way that sort of enables people to see how them making individual contributions is actually also beneficial to their organizations, and they should be able to bill for it.
I'm going to
Stop there.
But please do, please do add your comments in the front pad. Thank you, Malvika, for taking notes in there as well. And we can definitely come back to it. And as Kirsty said, we can continue the conversation on Slack as well. I'm going to give us a short break now. We'll come back at 4:00 and then we'll go through the working group updates. So looking forward to that. See you all in 5 minutes time. Now back in the room, although classic, I can't see everyone without blocking out half my screen. We're now on to the section of the community forum on working group updates. So either Anne is presenting on behalf of the working group or somebody from the working group has kindly joined us to share what they've been working on in over the past sort of 3 months or so since the last community forum. So there we go.
There's something on this.
There's something there.
Oh yeah, hold on. Zoom for some reason can't, it blocks the Zoom video out. This is why I like having more than one screen. Wonderful. So moving on. And starting first up with the book dash, which again, why? So, Esther, please take it away.
Yeah, so we had some very nice successes from the Book Dash working group. We had a Spanish application form for this Book Dash, which is very exciting, and hopefully in future Book Dashes we'll be able to reuse this one more easily and more on time. But it's a work in progress, and we'll get there. And another success that we had was that we actually managed to find a meeting time that works for everyone, which is amazing, and probably also says something about the representation from Asia, Australia, and these regions. So maybe a call to action from people in those areas. Please do sign up for the next Planning Book Dash Committee. Challenges. We're still working on the starting page of the Book Dash. That's the one page that participants get so that they have access to all of the information instead of being overwhelmed by 5,000 links. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to navigate throughout the week. And we still have to do a lot of documentation or streamlining of the new GitHub repository for the working group. So we can do better with that. That said, we have 28, is it? Anne, is it 28 or 30? Anyway, we have lots of applications accepted for the next Book Dash. And so we are looking forward to seeing you during Book Dash week from the 4th of November to the 8th of November. And my cat is also very excited about this and is distracting me. So please do join if you applied and we accepted your application. And if you haven't applied, you're very welcome to join the share out sessions on the Friday, the 8th of November, to hear about everyone's updates and to see who has joined Book Dash, what we've done, and to hopefully get inspired for the next Book Dash. And I see that I'm right with 30 applicants that we accepted. So it's getting big. And I think that was my update.
Thanks, Esther. I'm just going to quickly check the chat. And I just want to ask somebody from the Book Dash working group or planning committee to share the sign up for the sessions on the 8th of November so that you get sent a calendar invite and a Zoom link, just to make things a bit easier so you don't forget. But please do join us there. Thank you very much, Esther. Next up is Batul for the Translation and Localization Working Group.
Yeah, thank you, Ariel. So in terms of the translation localization, so not much progress being made for the summer. I think most of what we've been reflecting on is documentation resources, what have others been using as well or creating. And most of this discussion actually took place in a meeting we had in Washington, DC in September. The same meeting, but not the same breakout room, also attended by Esther and by Malvika. And there were many communities attended, including the Chinese Open Science Network, which is a grassroots actually community, Data Umbrellas and others. And we talked about workflows, localization, glossaries, what resources they've been using. Then I think I was very sort of happy that we followed after that sort of meeting by Zoom call just last week, and we agreed sort of to meet a regular basis during the same slot for the localization for working call at the Turing Way. And I think one of the issues that people sort of highlighted and they wanted a list somewhere where documented all of these key issue and workaround and localization in open source are listed, like huge list, just what problem people have encountered and what they sort of work around it. And also a list of communities involved in localization, a list of the resources that exist. Like I think each community have their own sort of list, like how we can sort of combine them. And we spent some time just discussing where actually to host these, what's the easier way and what's the accessible way. And eventually we ended up just using Awesome List. Again, if you're not familiar with Awesome List, it's just something very quick and fine. Like it's one of these, the popular list is hosted in GitHub that lists all the links associated with a specific topic. So we've initiated one just for localization translation because there wasn't anything about localization. And this is likely sort of to be moved or linked into the Turing Way, but not sure in what shape. So that's sort of the success and celebration that we had. In terms of challenges, it's the same challenges. Multi-deployment remain a challenge, work with the infrastructure team. Our grant application for the Digital Infrastructure Fund was not accepted. In terms of actions, again, going back to this awesome list, if you have any resources, tools, you have your own hidden list somewhere, if you can sort of share it in this awesome list, that would be wonderful. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Thank you very much, Batul. That's amazing. I think we're going to come back to a question and answer at the end of everyone. So I'm going to move on now to infrastructure from Jim.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we've made some small bits of progress using the successes, some issues closed and fixes and improvements. a bit of work that's going to be continuing in the near future is breaking down the sort of monolithic repository with loads of stuff in, so that we've got a clear book repository and other repositories for other sort of Turing-way stuff that we like to track and version control. This same challenges as last time. So as a working group, we're quite rich in enthusiasm, poor in time, which sort of, yes, I see Sarah clicking, presents some difficulty. And one of the things that's sort of most difficult, and we spend a lot of time talking and thinking about, is we quite like to move hosting, and but I suppose we're a bit conservative because we recognize that moving to a platform that removes features would be bad for the community. So it's not just about making us happy and what we think is technically the best. We also got to think about what the broader aim is, what the big goal of the project is. So having preview builds of the book for PRs might sort of be a sticking point. Although I think Danny hasn't written it down, but Danny actually made some really great progress towards a way that we might be able to do that using GitHub Pages. So hopefully that's sort of a fruitful endeavor. We'll see. The chair of the working group has changed to me. So very, very happy about that, and yeah, pleased to take that role and do whatever I can. And as always, we're a very friendly group, so feel free to tag us in Slack or in issues of PRs if there's anything we can do to help, or if things don't make sense, or if you think things might be broken. And we'd love people to get in touch with ideas of what could be improved, or so what isn't working for people, or if they've got ideas of things that we might be able to automate or sort of solve that way. Yeah, that's everything for me.
Great, thank you very much, Jim. That all sounds incredible. Thank you, everyone on the infrastructure working group. Moving over now to the accessibility working group. Liz, are you presenting the update for this?
I am. Our successes are that I think we told you last time we had a fireside chat about accessibility in open science, and we have published a blog on the Research Software Engineering Society webpage about that and what it means in our community, and hopefully is an entry place for people to start learning about accessibility. We have a new member who's planning a chapter contribution for the Book Dash in November. Some of our challenges are that we've had more delays than we ever thought in reviewing and collaborating on the accessibility policy, and we're hoping maybe to release it during Book Dash. We have challenges with member retention. Again, everybody's volunteering. I don't know that everybody has the kind of institutional support that was mentioned earlier. I don't, because I work on a contract basis, so I don't have any support for my time. I'm just doing it because it's important. The things that we have to celebrate is that we are, bringing accessibility across the whole Turing way, not just the book, but the community, in terms of working with accessible tools and things like the Framapad, and moving to more open source tools as well. We are repeating a session where people get together and write alt texts for the Scriberia images during Book Dash. I think that's been going on for the last 4 or 5 Book Dashes, and people seem to enjoy doing that. So as far as our calls to action, we want to continue to embed access-centered practices in our community. I've been working a lot with Anne and with our other community members, but I kind of only bring my perspective, and it would be really great to to look at more aspects of accessibility. We also need to have a continuing discussion with the community about where to put the forthcoming guide for accessibility, whether that should be its own guide at the level of the 5 main Turingway guides, or whether it should be within ethics or some other part of the existing framework. And I think there's a lot of pros and cons and a lot of things to talk about. And that's it for me.
Great, thank you very much, Liz. And just a quick shout out to the links and other announcements to look out for at the bottom of this slide as well for everyone. I think we'll share these slides afterwards so that you can access them. Great.
Yeah, links are good.
Amazing. So I'm going to, this has come to the end of sort of the formal presentation portion of the Turingway Community Forum. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think we can pause the recording here.
Should we take a few questions?
I think we can.
Oh, okay, we'll do a few. Okay, so we'll do a few questions if anyone has any on the working group updates. So if anyone has questions on accessibility, infrastructure, book dash, translation and localization, now is the time to put your hand up, or we'll double check if anyone has put anything in the spammer pad, which does not look like.
Just have a comment.
Yeah.
I really love the awesome translation repository idea. It's really great, and really interested to see how we can also have some of the knowledge that Batul, you and the team have created around practices. I know that you've written a chapter in the Turingway, and we've had some people from Our Ladies actually say that they use that translation workflow to re-implement, and I'm seeing increasingly more people are keen to identify how to take the workflow that you all have created and reuse them. So sounds like awesome translation repository would be a good way to promote that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's more about, so it would be probably more suited if this is, I think some people might say, like, why not start that? Let's just inside the Turingway and have all of that sort of place inside. And I think we had a lot of sort of discussion that meeting, just way to host it and what's the easier way actually to get it started. So we started it with the awesome list because you didn't see any sort of awesome list around localization translation. And although GitHub is not the most accessible thing actually in China, so they were thinking of having a mirror in Gitty also to make it sort of viewable in China, sort of access it. But they thought at the same time, that's like, this is the easiest way. So we've taken sort of the majority, sort of how they thought to initiate it. But I think there's many ways we can sort of link it inside the Turingway, or I mean, this is going to be developed because there's a lot of things that we wanted to do within that, which might not be awesome list the best way, but we at least wanted to get started. Actually, we initiated, I think, in the meeting itself, and then we sort of, followed up after that. So we just wanted to get started and have an extremely long list where Chinese community can also add their list. We add our list, that time below the list, like combine them all in one place and have it sort of discoverable by people within the community. But then, there's going to be other sort of ways in the future where we're probably going to find other places that best host it, if that makes sense. Again, we try and, and that's in terms of the awesome list.
Great. Kirsty, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of build on what Batul was saying, because I think it's I think having the link to the open science team and community in China is so cool, and it's such an important point about the fact that the technical infrastructure isn't accessible. Like it's a really valuable aspect. One of the other things that I wanted to just sort of share with the community is on Wednesdays community collaboration cafe, we had this really great conversation where Zoe, who is part of the NHSR community, had talked about the fact that she has copied and rehosted and sort of curated for that community quite a bit of the content from the Turing Way. And that is completely fine. That is 100% inside of the license. That is, you know, with attribution, which she puts absolutely everywhere. That's totally fine. What we ended up talking about an awful lot is the fact that sort of duplicating wasn't the sort of original vision of the Turing Way. The original vision of the Turing Way was that you'd sort of answer it in one place, and then a bit like Carlos was talking about with the eScience Institute, you'd have your sort of specific information that was needed, but the general information. So he gave the example of why would you choose a license? And then specifically, we encourage you to choose this license for this organization, was the model. But what I wanted to share, because I thought it was so important, and I really think it builds into what you were talking about, Batul, and what you've been grappling with, is Zoe has found that people don't click on links. So with all the best will in the world, you say, here's more information about this, here's how you can find out about this, here's what this. And it just, the human beings being human do not necessarily go and click on that. And I just wanted to share that back because I thought that was, like, I think sometimes there are technical reasons why you don't go, and sometimes there are just plain human like how humans navigate the internet reasons that this point about kind of discoverability, navigating the book, and then kind of how do real people not like actually engage with the Turing Way rather than how they quote unquote should engage with the Turing Way is just a really fascinating discussion. So I wanted to kind of share that back for this community. I thought it was great chat on Wednesday.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other, Jim, you've got your hand up, and then I'll go to questions in the Fram pad.
Yeah, I was just thinking what you saying, like, Cassie, reminded me when we've spoken to people working on MistMD, one of the features they're really sort of proud of is the sort of nested tooltips. So if you hover over a link, a little preview will pop up, and in fact you can then from that hover over more links, and more tooltips will pop up. And their idea is very much to sort of use that as a way to, I suppose, more visibly build this sort of network of books. So instead of people feeling they need to put all the information in their book on their site, people will be a bit more encouraged to link to other resources when they can, and sort of keep their book sort of tidy and focused on a particular thing. It'd be interesting to see if that. I don't know if they've got sort of like user testing to know if that works more. I can see like a little tooltip popping up, and being able to read that quickly is a bit easier than navigating to a brand new site. I also don't really know how it would work with like screen readers or anything. So I suppose that's another question, but that's something that in the future might sort of help with this.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much. We've got one question in the chat. So sorry, one question not in the chat, in the Framble pad. Actually, this is for Danny and Jim. What does transferring the infrastructure working group chair role from Danny to Jim look like in practice?
Nice.
We had a very grand ceremony. Yep.
Was there ice cream?
No, we should do that next time though. No, in practice, what it means is that Jim is now has slightly more responsibility than the rest of us to keep us all in track in meetings. And I don't know what the broader progress is of this within the project, but my understanding is that we will get invited to a special set of secret meetings at some point as chairs of the working groups. So
I can talk about that.
So that opportunity on to Jim for now.
Because it's secret because it's not been written down. It's not actually secret. So in previous ones of these community forums, we've been sort of trialing and building up, and this is one of the things that I'm going to work on in the book dash, is actually sort of getting it written up, a 3-level sort of decision-making structure. So individual contributor, trying to keep that as big as possible, as many possible ways of sort of individual people, so long as you abide by the code of conduct, you can open a pull request, you can participate, or everything like that. Having a maintainer level, and this is working groups, as we've just heard updates from. I'm also looking to build in a concept of a delivery group, which is a sort of, instead of a fully permissive group of people where anyone can come along, it's a group who are working on a particular sort of set of deliverables with some sort of external accountability. So maybe that's a funder, maybe that's an employer, maybe whatever that looks like, but that's a delivery group. And so that would sort of be a bubble in that maintainer level, similar to how we have working groups. And then the vision, which we have not implemented, but the hope is that we will in 2025, is a steering council made up of all the chairs of all of those bubbles at the maintainer level. So yes, so Danny's exactly right. At the moment, it's not a huge difference, but hopefully in the future, it will be the chairs will be a conduit up to regular, don't know how often, for discussion with the community, meetings that bring together a sort of decision-making body for the whole project at that sort of, at the level with the most complexity and the need for understanding of context across the history of the project.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I don't see any more questions in the pad, but obviously we can continue the conversation on Slack. I'm just going to say thank you to everyone who presented and shared today and everyone for coming along. I'm going to stop the recording now.
And then the